you very much. I'm really excited to be here with you guys and to be able to show people across the state and farther about the shoes, since not everyone can travel to Jeff City even on a regular day. So I'm really excited to talk about this. It is November, and that is Native American Heritage Month. So I'm really excited to bring some of the heritage of our Native Americans from Missouri to everyone. Bringing it to you here from Jefferson City, which is traditional homeland of the Oto Missouri tribe and the Osage Nation, as well as other tribes that moved through Missouri. So I'm really excited to show some of the amazing things that they made while they were here. Go to the first slide. So I'm at the University of Missouri, only 30 minutes from here in Columbia, and our museum is open 6 days a week. And we have free admission. We're only closed on Mondays, so please come on by and see the exhibits and see the items online and in person. It's really great to see them while you're there. And I'm going to talk to you about Arnold Research Cave, which is in Callaway County, so just one county from here, one county from Columbia as well, right up near the Missouri River. So here's the area that the cave is, just to give you an overview. It's really hard to see if you're not familiar with the area, but I'll zoom in on it in just a moment. So archaeology is the study of ancient and recent human past through material remains. Everyone likes to see the beautiful objects that we have in the museum, but they have to get there first. And so objects are made and they are used and they are discarded, and then they go through the soil, or however they are sitting there waiting for someone to excavate, whether it's us excavating on purpose or someone who's building a house or a store or anything like that, a highway, things like that. We will excavate and find things. Here's some work that we were doing in New Mexico, and we can dig right close to the surface, not very far. And then there's a picture of me with my daughter of about 15 years ago. We were down in Chihuahua, just south of the border, working on a really large site and checking out the large site to look for the smaller sites around and some of the pottery that we find while we're out there, which helps tell us about the human past. Just some terms that I'm going to use. Artifact is anything made or used by humans, and that that can be portable. You can carry it around like a spearhead or a piece of pottery or a grinding stone. Versus a feature, which would be a non-portable artifact, which is something like a hearth or a house, a storage pit. You can't pick that up and bring that back to the museum. Those things stay there. And then an ecofact. Sometimes things are on a site that we didn't put there, humans did not put there. So that could be a snake slithered on and died there, or a rabbit died there, a mouse, whatever it might be, that's just there that had nothing to do with the humans being there. So those are some of the kind of things. And sometimes we find fossils, and fossils aren't man-made, but humans like to pick them up in the past as well as today, so we often look at fossils as well. But after excavation, what happens to your artifacts? Well, we wash them in the field. There's a picture of my daughters doing their job as archaeologist children. They're cleaning some historic tiles. Toothbrush and water, and that's all you need to get going, unless you're going to do residue analysis. Back to the lab to do the analysis. They say every day in the field takes at least 3 days in the lab to analyze. And this is some of the pottery that I worked on in southern New Mexico. We can analyze the clays. We can use lasers to zap the paints and see what the paints are made of and see what minerals they're using for the paints. But then the artifacts go into a museum, and a facility where other researchers can come study them, or they can be used in museum exhibits. And often our facilities will welcome visitors to come get a tour, schedule a tour to see in the back. There's a picture of some of the long rows of boxes we have in the Museum Support Center, where we store about 8 million artifacts from excavations across Missouri. And you can see some pottery at the bottom. On the left two are Missouri potteries, and then the right 3 are southwestern pottery that I also specialize in. But I love to show those off. But here's some sites that you may have heard of. Of course, Monk's Mound is at Cahokia, which is just over the state line into Illinois. Very large site, many mounds. The mound site extended over into St. Louis, but a lot of those were torn down in the past. Sugarloaf Mound is still standing. That is owned by the Osage Nation. You might have heard of Stonehenge in England or the pyramids in Giza. I want to point out that that was about 2500 BC, because we're going to compare those to our shoes in a minute. And then Paquimé in Chihuahua, which is about the same time as Monk's Mound, so those are the two largest cities in North America at that time. So we have large cities with big trade networks. They're moving people and items all over the place around 1200 AD here. But we're Missourians, or a lot of us are Missourians, so here's the Missouri archaeological time periods. We know Missourians, people have been in Missouri since at least 11,200 years ago, which is about 9200 BC. So that is before the Ice Age ended. So we did have mammoths and mastodons here in Missouri. We had, the short-faced bear, saber-toothed cat. All of those things were here and died out at the end of the Ice Age. So that's our Paleo-Indian period, and we move into the Archaic period, which is a really long time. They're using atlatls to hunt during the Archaic period. An atlatl is a spear thrower, and I'll show you part of that in a minute. And so they're hunting and gathering and moving across the land. In the Woodland period is exciting times. When archaeologists change the name of a period, it's because something big is happening. And in the Woodland period, they start making pottery. They really make it a little bit in the late Archaic in Missouri, but they start making pottery. We invent the bow and arrow. So the bow and arrow is invented here around 500 AD. And they are gardening, and they switch their diet to an oily, starchy seeds, which really has a lot more nutrition in it. And we see the population rise in the Woodland period because of that. And then Mississippian period, they're moving into full agriculture in some places. So we have Cahokia is large, and they have fields and can feed the people. So that's a Mississippian period. And then 1451, we switch to, 1541. I was like, 14, that's early. 1541, we move into the historic period in Missouri because DeSoto comes into the Boot Hill of Missouri, and that's when we have the first written records of Missouri, of the people that he saw and what they were wearing and records like that. So historic is 1541 in Missouri. At the university, we do a lot of excavations all across the state, and so one of our most local one at the university is on the university, and that's the Conley House. That's an Italianate house that we have excavated the grounds around there and recorded where the gardens were, the family that lived there, and you purchased this house in 1980, and it's just the home of the writing program, and so it's really cool. If you can get inside there, go in and check it out. So that's one of the most local things we do. Also close, but not so close as now that we have the interstate system. Graham Cave is over in Callaway County. We excavated there. The Graham family invited the university out, and then we worked there for years, and then helped, Dr. Carl Chapman helped make that into a state park. And so the cave looks very similar to Arnold Research Cave. In fact, if it's not labeled, it can be very difficult to tell which photo you have. But you can see Mrs. Jean Hamilton in the bottom photo. She was one of the Missouri Archaeology Society members who helped excavate. And then you can see the man in the pith helmet is marking a storage pit down into the soils of the cave. And then I like the view from the inside of the cave out of them digging and mapping and bagging the artifacts so we know where everything came from. So that's Graham Cave. And so that is actually the closest site that I'll send people to go see. So if you want to see an archaeological site, you can go to Graham Cave and look at the interpretation panels and look in the cave. It's fenced off to protect the remains in there, any other artifacts, but you can see in there. So that's really a nice place. Another one is the Ute site, which is named after the family who owned the farm, not the people. The people that lived at the Ute site were the Missouri tribe, and they left there in 1712 because the French researcher Etienne Bernard de Bourmont was living with them, and they moved across to the other side of the Missouri River. So it's right on the Missouri River, and this is now Van Meter State Park, so you can visit there as well. But it's on Jacques Marquette's map of 1673. You can see the site right there on there. But they make beautiful large pots and carving on the hematite tablets, and then you can see the Jesuit ring there as the missionaries are coming up the Missouri River, and we're seeing some more Jesuit pieces in many of the sites in the area. Here's a couple of the houses from the Ute site. Sometimes we know a house not because we have a thing, but because of the dark soil. So you see the dots? Those are post mold, so that's where posts of the house were, and they rotted out, leaving the soil darker. And so we can see how big the house is. We can estimate how many people lived in the house. So that gives you a family size. Sometimes they would reuse the same site. So you see I have house 7 in green, house 6 is in a pinkish color, and that is showing that they just reuse the site and it turns a different direction to face a different direction. And so they would put those posts in and then bend them towards the middle and tie them to make the top of the house. So that's really neat. Other tools we find, lots of bison in the plain. So the big bison shoulder blades, the scapula, make great hoes, and so we often find hundreds of those because they were farming then at the Ute site. And then other animal bones turn into tools. We have antler tines, which are used for flint knapping to make stone tools, and then bone awls for punching holes in leather or other things like that, and other materials you might use to make awls. Bones are really good to use for that. Beautiful pottery and different designs we find at that time. So here's some of the handles we find on the large pots. You can see that while the clay is leather hard, you can incise and make designs in there. And so that's what's happening here on these rim shirts with the handles. And of course, lots of stone pipes. We find different designs on the pipes there of different ways to make them. Sometimes we're very extravagant with the discs on the top. Others are smaller and just stone. You could use a braid for the pipe stem. And then showing in 1948 field school, I like to see the early days of digging. They had nothing fancy like we have now with leather Trimbles and GPS units. So they had to really be good at mapping. We are today as well, but they were out there in the heat doing it. But you're here to hear about Arnold Research Cave, and that's in Callaway County, Missouri. This is what it looked like when we started excavating there in the 50s. The family graciously invited us out. They were digging out part of the cave. They wanted to put some stuff in there, but the soil was very tall, and so they couldn't really get in there and stand up. And they kept finding things coming out of there, like baskets, woven things, and they were digging it out, and they were like, what are these things? So they called the university and asked if they wanted to come out, and Dr. Chapman said yes. And they came out, and it was amazing. So this is a sandstone cave, and we're from the cave state, so we all know about caves. They're wet and they're damp, and you see the stalactites and the stalagmites, but this one is not like that. This one is sandstone, and it's dry. There's no water inside, and so when you walk in, you can just feel the dryness. Speaking to one of the 1980s excavators, like you would sweat and all of the dirt would stick to your skin because it's so dry. There's nothing. And they would have to wear bandanas on their face, like our masks maybe would be helpful. Bandanas on their face to keep the dust from inhaling it. It's so dry in there. But nicely, there's water right next to the cave, and so that's a really great place to live. But it's a dry sandstone cave. But being a dry cave allowed the artifacts to preserve. We don't usually get perishable artifacts. 3 things really preserve in archaeology: stones, bones, and pottery. And here we have shoes and baskets and fishing nets, all kind of amazing things that we hardly ever get to study. And so we're really excited that these were preserved and that the family invited us out to look at these. So this is a picture of some of the early excavations, digging out what had come out when they were digging to put things into the cave and to see what had fallen out as trash during the times that they lived there. You can see they were digging deep down in. They got a wheelbarrow in there, and then if you overlook in the cave, you can see there's not a lot of space for your head standing up there on that bottom photo. But I'll show you the end picture, how it looks today is different. So here's some of the bags actually coming out of the ground. You can see big, large bags, big pieces, not just tiny pieces being found. Some of them had stuff in them, like charcoal or corn or small seeds or something in there. The middle picture is hard to see. I don't have a really good picture of it for modern times, but those are the shoes in a pile. We call trash piles middens in archaeology, so there were at least 2 middens where we found most of the shoes. With 35 shoes, none of them are matching pairs. Some are left foot, some are right foot, some are either foot. But there was 2 big piles of them in the trash when they were excavating, and so that's my one picture showing several of them together. And then you can see a 1980s picture in color at the bottom. Here's from some of the early research, are some of the stone tools, going back all the way in time, back to Dalton points you see here in the middle. And then the drawings on the left are great. Photos are great, but the drawings on the left really show each flake. So each piece of stone was knocked off to sharpen that blade, to make that point. You can see the time that it took someone to make those. Really good flint knapper would probably take 15 or 20 minutes. But to us, it's like, wow, that's a lot of knowledge and skill there. And there are some people today who can do it, but this is really beautiful stone tools. Also bones preserved, so we have 2 hairpins, one with the top piece of it where it's nice and wide, look like hairpins today, but they're decorated and they're really pretty, and then a bone or shell pendant. So we excavated, I wanted to show you the dates, 1955 to 1958, and then the family called the university back out. They were going to sell the land and asked us to excavate the rest of it to make sure that everything was out of the cave. And so we really thank the Arnold family for that opportunity and for allowing these to be studied by the researchers. Here's some of the perishable materials. Of the 35 shoes, 2 were leather, and there's the deerskin one. It's about child size, a very small shoe, and we have that one. It's really beautiful. And then a sandal in the middle, you can see the bottom of it is caked in mud, and then the top of it has like a zigzag pattern for tying it on your foot. So I really like to see the ways of tying sandals on. You can see some twined fabric there, and it didn't preserve very well, but you can see the pattern and how they put it together. And we have people that study woven things. Which way are they doing it? Where did they learn it? Are they doing the same here as they're doing in other parts of the U.S.? People compare those kind of things. And then the twined grass bag at the top, you can see that is very different from the fabric on the bottom. This is one of my favorite pieces, is the net. It's pinned out so you can see the squares of the fishing net. We assume it's fishing, but there's a net that was found in the materials in the cave. And then sometimes we have just pieces of twined either braids, or it could have been part of a shoe where it would have been the tie-on. Sometimes we find cordage bundled up, little bundles of it, like maybe it was going to be used for later, and things like that. But it's interesting to see how they do it, and you can tell how you learn by which way you twist and do your opposite twist and then twine them together, sort of like plies on yarn. You twist and then you put the two together. So that's really interesting to see. This is one of my favorite pieces. In the cave, in the trash pile, oh my gosh, is an atlatl dart foreshaft. So this would have gone on a really long spear or dart. And that would be the front half of it, and it had the stone tool still on there, still wrapped with the plant material, and so now we can see the exact style of the way the tribes would, the people would wrap that on there to make it stay. We did get an x-ray, so you can see the x-ray below it, so we can see the shape of the point. We don't want to unwrap it and see. We can date points by their styles, and so that allowed us to see there. But when we did a CT scan of it, you can see under that plant material is big globs of glue. So probably pitch or something like that. I haven't tested it yet. But big glob of glue under there to really hold that in place to make it stay. And so that's really, really interesting. So I'm hoping to radiocarbon date that plant material. And there's a new way we can do that without having to cut off a piece or break off a piece. And so I'm hoping to get that done soon. But also with the one with the point at the bottom, there was another foreshaft made exactly like it. Doesn't have the point on the end, but it's painted red, and so that one's really cool to see, the red one. You might wonder why you might paint it red. Was it a symbolic reason or other reason? I'm an archer, and so we paint our arrows or mark them differently so that we can tell which one is ours. So it could be as simple as I can tell my atlatl darts from your atlatl darts, or it could be a symbolic reason, but I don't have the answer to that. But that's interesting that they were both right next to each other in the trash. One is red and one is not. And here's one of the shoes at the top that they found in 1981. It's a really interesting shoe, and it is different from all the others. It's a different style to find that one, but that one's very cool. That one I'll have a color photo of. You can see the bag down there, and you can see some of the drawings of where everything came from in the cave. You know, when you dig an archaeological site, when you dig anything, you destroy it. You're taking everything out of context. You can never put it back. And so your records are very important. You have to draw everything in, map it all in. Even the sidewall of dirt, we map that in to see where the layers change color. So drawing, mapping, photographing, all those things are very important skills that you may not think that an archaeologist would need to do. You just need to dig square holes. But no, all of this is required, so when we get back to the lab, we can really put it together. That tool was next to that tool. Oh, is that a toolkit? Does that go together for a reason? Or is that under that always, so is that piece older than the other piece? So can we tell which was put down first? Because of the law of superposition. Whatever you put down first is at the bottom, and then you put something down on top, and then on top of that. Sort of like my daughter's bedroom. It's messy. Whatever she threw down first is at the bottom. Whatever she threw down last is going to be at the top of the pile. So it's the same way in archaeology that we go through. Of course, nature likes to mess that up with either burrowing rodents, or a flood can come and wash out a layer. So you have to be able to pay attention to something that might have happened in your site. But that's how we work through those. Here's some pictures of our excavations from 1955. You can see they have to bend over because they're going to hit their heads, and how we sift every single scoop of dirt to make sure we're getting all the small artifacts as well. And then, you know, don't fall in the big trenches that they've dug. And then do refill those trenches at the end so that no one falls in, and it protects them to keep the site together, whatever's left. Here's the pictures from the 81 excavations. You can see the cultural layers at the top, the darker color. So that's the cultural layer. So a lot of the cave is before humans even came into Missouri. So you can see there's a quite marked layer of cultural and not cultural. But you can see some of the squares laid out, and how you would measure what was in one side and the next square over. Do you need to go over another square? How far do you need to go down before you hit the sterile earth and stop digging? Here's some of the shoes. What I like is a lot of them, they were in the trash pile, but you can see a lot of them have holes in the heel. So we are walking on our shoes and using them until they were ruined all the way through a hole. But like I said, we don't have any matching pairs, so I don't know if you got a hole in one shoe, you would weave another one and make just one, or did you make a matching set at once? I don't know that, but it is interesting that we don't have any matching pairs. So you can see the deer leather shoe at the top, and on the bottom left is a slip-on shoe, and the next one over is as well. Then at the very top right is the zigzag tie shoe, and then the one below it also has a heel in the hole in the heel. And the one below is a big shoe that could be either left foot or right foot, but could really also be maybe an overshoe. We're not sure on that one. It's really large, but also has a hole in the heel. And these are made out of rattlesnake master, which is part of the carrot parsley family, but it really kind of looks like yucca. The leaves are long and thin like a yucca, but they shoot up 5 foot tall, and it has little white balls for a flower. And those still grow in Missouri today. You can see them at Tucker Prairie and other places. But they're really easy to identify because of the white thistle-like ball at the top. They're very unique. Here's some more pieces of shoes that you might have. We have little woven pieces. Other pieces they're coated in mud and dirt. The bottom one I like because there's a small string around that would go around your heel, and so that's how you would tie it on. It's kind of hard to see there, but if you look, you can see a special twined piece, or like a piece of rope that would tie that onto your foot. Here's 2 more sandals and possibly a slip-on there. One is sort of a closed-toed sandal, but it has the zigzag rope to tie onto your foot. And then the other one was probably one of those big overshoes. All with rattlesnake master using as the plant. You can buy rattlesnake master over here at Brazito at the native plants place, so I've been growing it. And you can rip it into strips and weave it wet, and the next day I came back and it had dried and kept its shape, so I haven't branched out to make a sandal yet. But it seems like it might be easy to work with. I haven't walked on one either though. Here's some of the bags up close. You can see big, large twined bag, and then on the other side more of a, some people would use them as a produce bag, kind of a stretchy bag that you can fill up and carry. And so it's really amazing to see the different types that were in use. Usually we're only talking about holders that are clay because the pottery lasts, but to have these perishable ones and see the different styles that might have been, we can see what we might be missing. How many other things at other sites are we not seeing that are bags, or how many wooden artifacts that we're not seeing because they rotted away. And so to be able to see these and get a snapshot in time is really amazing. So we were able to, Dr. O'Brien was able to do some dating on the shoes. So when radiocarbon dating was invented in 1949 by Libby, it took a really large sample. And because these are very rare to have the shoes, we did not want to give up such a large piece of the shoes to do that. But when AMS Dating, accelerator mass spectrometry, came out, you could use a much smaller piece. And so we're able to take samples from 8 of the shoes and do some radiocarbon dating on that. So radiocarbon it's really easy. People are taking in carbon while they're living, and then once you die, you stop bringing it in, and the carbon-14 that you have starts decaying. So as it decays, you have less and less in you, and so we can measure how much you do have and subtract it and see from the half-life of the carbon and give you a date with a plus or minus error. It's not exactly, we can't say in 1402 this happened, but plus or minus around an area you can get a good date. So this shoe, the really special one that I said was very different in design with the wrap around the toe. This one dated to 4,400 years before present being 1950, but we can go around 2000 and say 2000. So 4462 is about 2462 BC plus or minus. In there, so like someone was walking around 2400 at the time the pyramids were built, wearing these kind of shoes here in mid-Missouri, weaving with the rattlesnake master, living, using the fishing nets, hunting with the atlatl, using the bags and those kind of things. So we could put a more broad picture of the people that lived here. Would love to see some of the clothing if that would have preserved, but we don't have any of that right now. But we can see the shoes that they were wearing, and the bags that they were carrying. So it really gives us a more picture of the people. And here it is, the world's oldest open-toed sandal. It comes from Arnold Research Cave in Missouri. It is over 8,000 years old, so about 6,300 BC. So that's much earlier than the pyramids at Giza, which remember we're at 2,500 BC. You can see it has the lacing across the top. Nice thick pad of rattlesnake master, so you could walk on rocky areas, would be fine, and it will hold it onto your foot. It's the world's oldest open-toed sandal. It's the second oldest shoe in the world. This shoe is amazing, and so we love all of our shoes that you can see. And shoes are very popular because all of us wear them. We want to see what other people are wearing. Some people really love to go shoe shopping, other people don't. But we can see the different styles and what they were doing and how they could use thick pieces of rattlesnake master or make them thinner and make smaller, finer weaves, whatever they might be using them for. You can see the different styles that you can use. So that's kind of my talk about the shoes, and you're going to want to read more, right? So here's 2 books that I recommend. There's a book called Prehistory of Missouri, and it's in a lot of our public libraries. It's by Michael Bryan and Ray Wood. It's from the University of Missouri Press. We do sell it in our gift shop, but you can usually get it in your local library to check it out. And it talks about all of the time periods that I've told you about in time, and it shows you pictures of the artifacts. And if you find something, like if you found something on your land, you can match it up and see what time period it's from. It's a really useful book. If you really want to know just about the shoes, there's an article in Science in 1998 as well that talks about the shoes and the individual dates for each shoe, and you can see which one and what they might date to. But I promised you a picture of the cave. So this is a picture of the cave in 2017. We got to go out there. You can see how much I do not have to worry about hitting my head because the ceiling is very tall. We're thinking about 30 feet now, but you can see cultural layer is off to the side, very up high on the left-hand side. But you can see how much time went that this cave was formed before people actually came into it, and then all of the years, all the way back 8,000 years. Of the shoes, 8,000 was the oldest, 8,000 years old, but the youngest one we tested was 1,000 years. So we know they were using this cave, the Native Americans were using this cave for so long because of the rich resources around there, and they liked it.